The Shooting Range. In this episode, pages of history, making a tank engine, Squadmates, snowy Finland, and Metal Beasts, Chinese short-range king. We've met the Tomcat, taken a good look at the Mirage, and it's time for the Chinese top fighter, the J8 Modification F. At first glance, there's no difference from its predecessor. Is that actually true? Well, let's find out. This machine is propelled by a twin turbojet engine with afterburners. Self-sealing fuel tanks are found in the fuselage and between the wing spars. In the lower part of the fuselage, we can see a 23mm autocannon with an ammo pool of 200 rounds, while the nose cone hides the radar system. The plane has 7 hardpoints capable of carrying conventional and retarded bombs, rockets, and infrared-guided air-to-air missiles. The first and probably the biggest difference between the J8F and the B model is the missile choice. On the one hand, it's still a bit inferior to its predecessor due to the lack of radar-guided munitions. It will certainly get those when it sees equal competition, but so far it has to make do with the infrared homing devices. And that's where it wins all around, hands down. The PL-8 missiles, together with the Israeli Python 3s, are definitely the best short-range air-to-air missiles among aircraft. With a top speed of Mach 3.5 and maximum overload reaching 40 Gs, they can turn to the target and reach it from almost any position. The only limiting factor is the opponent's attention level and reaction time, since all they need to do if they want to dodge is to use flares on time. But missiles aren't the only new thing on this model. The top Chinese fighter also has a helmet-mounted display and a ballistic computer calculating lead for the autocannon. It's impossible to overestimate the value this offers in close-range combat. The power plant also got a buff of almost 1,000 extra kilogram forces in afterburner mode. It's good enough to improve the dynamics, but not to change the entire experience, of course. The J8 is one of those aircraft that can already accelerate past its airframe capability. And what happens next in such a case is a loss of something pretty important, and an emergency landing at best. Sometimes it's barely even a landing. So when you're flying at a low altitude, remember to check your speed and turn off the afterburner on time. Now, in mixed battles, the new plane is pretty much the same as its older sibling. It can carry the same conventional bombs and rockets. The ballistic computer will help you to use them efficiently, but that ain't a surprise, right? It's hard to find a top-tier jet that can't do that. The Chinese aviation tree just received a fearsome fighter for close-range air battles. It's bringing new record-setting missiles, which is already impressive, but it also has some unused potential left. Expect to see this metal beast again in the future. One of the major parts of a tank is its engine. It's an expensive, sophisticated, and needy device. In the early 20th century, when ground vehicles were small and cheap, one could make do with bus or truck engines. But tanks grew quickly, getting heavier, and the military wanted more and more capabilities. Soon it became evident that those machines needed their own motors, something more reliable and lasting than aircraft engines, but smaller and stronger than truck ones. The Americans were among the first to realize that. The US wasn't mass-producing tanks in the interwar period, but their engineers were already testing various designs. Those designs were later used to make the actual engines of war. It's important to know, though, that they weren't working on dedicated tank engines. The engineers placed their bets on aircraft radial engines. The first issues with that arose when the United States joined the Big War and those engines became scarce. Medium tanks used a star-shaped engine with 400 horsepower. Continental was making 450 of those a month. Was that a lot? Well, the Detroit factory alone was making 600 Shermans every month. Once they even set a record of 907 tanks. And that was just one factory, albeit a very big one. There was another issue. Aircraft radial engines were picky about their fuel. Early radial engines used gasoline with an octane rating of 87, but were later adapted to 76. It doesn't sound special today, but back then engines would usually settle on lower numbers. German tanks, for instance, could use 68 octane gasoline. Actually, their engines could seemingly use anything that wasn't pure water. Now, 87 octane was simply too expensive. So the Americans started looking for an alternative to the needy radial engines. General Motors proposed a combo of two inline two-stroke diesel engines. They'd been used on boats before and had a good reputation, so no extra issues were expected. However, the US military preferred gasoline, so the diesel M4A2s were supplied to the Soviet and British armies instead. The American Army used the M4A3 with the Ford engines. That engine was basically an aircraft V12 shortened to just 8 cylinders. It was strong, it was compact, and it used less fuel than older radial engines. The most unique motor, however, was the M4A4. Chrysler had no suitable engines on hand, so their engineers proposed the multibank, an assembly of 5 car engines. Together with the radiator, this wonder had a mass of 2.5 tons and an output of 425 horsepower. For example, the Panther's engine was only 1,200 kilograms and could produce 700 horsepower. The multibank was also huge and couldn't fit the engine compartment, so the tank had to get a new, longer one. The resulting build looked pretty ludicrous, but it worked surprisingly well. The tank could still move even after losing 12 out of 30 cylinders. The American Army didn't really need the M4A4. The regular Shermans were enough. The Soviet specialists didn't like it either, since it needed too much fuel. So the multi-bank tanks went to the British. You can imagine their first reaction. How on earth do we even service that? Soon, however, they found the tanks to be pretty reliable and forgiving. The machines served well in Normandy. After the war, the American engineers considered the new experience and began designing special tank engines. But that's a story we've already shared in one of our previous episodes. Last time, our squad mates took a nice little drive around sunny southern Europe. So now it's time to visit a place with a colder climate. Today, we'd like to tell you how you can achieve superiority on one of the oldest ground maps. Say hello to snowy Finland. Much like in most locations, the landscape is pretty symmetrical, so our recommendations stay true for both sides. For simplicity, we'll use the northern team in our showcase battle. Scenario 1 includes capturing the central and eastern parts of the map. Spawn and split up. One player should take the nearest road to get to a height in the south of square C4, while the other one should move to square D5. The first tank will be able to control the central road that leads to point B, and its squad mate will control the eastern access to that point as well as the road that goes along the frozen river. Once the first wave of attackers is defeated, the west player should slowly and carefully move towards point B, under their squad mate's cover. They're going to be extra vulnerable, so the other player needs to be super attentive if they don't want to lose their comrade. Next, the squad mates should take turns covering each other, and move to the ridge separating the eastern part of the map in square D5. They can still control the central point from here, but can also knock out enemies in the open area around point C. Later, this will help one of the players capture the second strategic area. Our next scenario focuses on the western part of the map. Once you spawn, move to point A together. One of you should rush to the capture area and hide behind the buildings to play bait. The other one should position themselves under the rock to cover the first. Booby trap all set up and ready for prey. Once the attackers are reduced to ruins, both of you should move further to the rocky pass in square F3. Once you consolidate here, You'll be able to cut off the western part of the map from enemy reinforcements and even help your team on the central point. Moreover, your allies will have capped point B by that time, but if they haven't, you shouldn't worry much. One of you should just go and take it, using the surprise effect to put some shells in enemy rears. Meanwhile, the other one can go to the hill in square E5 and hold off the incoming waves. Once the center is clear, you can reunite and either defend the pass between points A and B or continue moving east. If you choose the latter, your actions may mirror the first scenario. Your combat success depends on your coordination, flexibility, and quick thinking, so don't be afraid of improvising and changing plans on the go. What we propose is just a base for your own strategies. And, by the way, you can share those with less experienced players in the comments. Meanwhile, it's time for us to answer some of your questions. The first question was sent by a player called Meliodas. Are there any Dutch tanks, or aircraft, or battleships in the game? Hi, Meliodas. Well, we can say that the only Dutch vehicles are a couple of Fokker D21s, found in the Swedish tech tree. Another question comes from Askel. Why does the JA-37D Rank 4 modification cost 85,000 RP? But any other country's top-tier jet modification doesn't come close to that? Hi there, Askel. Rank 4 modifications for the JA-37D cost 57,000 at the moment, but we see what you're worried about. You see, the total cost of all single-rank modifications for all top-tier aircraft is around 170,000. That's why each module's cost depends on the total number of those modules. The F-14B has 6 modules on rank 4, each costing 29,000, while the Italian F-16 has 2 modules, for 85,000 each. It's priced this way to make spading vehicles of the same rank have the same cost, no matter how many modules they have. Anakin La Chocolatine writes, if a missile is launched locked on a target and its vehicle, plane or tank, is destroyed, will it reach the target anyways? Well, hello there. It depends on the guiding principle of the missile. It will lose the target if the target designation was provided by the carrier's laser or radar. However, missiles with infrared or TV-guided homing devices won't care if the launcher's lost. And the last comment for today was written by a Pixie. What's currently the fastest jet in the game? Hi there. This title still belongs to the Soviet MiG-29 across all altitudes. Rest assured, when we see a new speed record, we're gonna tell you all about it. That's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Sunday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. Don't forget to check for snipers when you fight in Finland. Leave a like, share your thoughts and comments, and see you next week.